right into it. This is episode 9 of the Know Your Numbers podcast, a Better Books broadcast with Chris McCormack. And today we have a special guest in Bryan McDaniel. Bryan is a realtor in the Central Florida area. He specializes in finding and analyzing deals. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bryan, but I do believe you just launched your own agency. Is that right?
Not my own agency, so I'm still with
Okay.
eXp Realty, but stepped away from a team structure to an independent structure to start building my own business and seeking that out for myself.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting, and congrats to you on that. I know that was a big jump, and I'm excited for you. So can't wait to see where it takes you. But yeah. So today's episode, we're gonna rap about the importance of numbers in your position in real estate in general, and how it's helped you thus far in your real estate journey, and also how it's going to help you in the future years. But if you don't mind, just giving a little bit more of an introduction about yourself. How long have you been in real estate? What's your experience like? What do you enjoy? What might not be as enjoyable, if there's anything? And yeah, we'll go from there.
Yeah, so my family's actually been in real estate in the Georgia and the Atlanta area for about 100 years. And I grew up kind of seeing that and watching it happen, and thought it was, it was always something that was interesting and it was somewhat familiar, and got to the point in my life and my family and my marriage where we were really talking about, okay, what do we need? Like, what should we do? What's the thing that's going to make sense for the next 30, 40 years, whatever? What's going to, check all the boxes? Something that provides income, that gives us flexibility, but lets us provide something sustainable for generations after us, gives us something to hand down to our kids, and to be able to have steady income where at some point we can choose, okay, well, what are the things I want to do now that I have income from this one thing? So real estate checks all those boxes. I love to learn, and it's a huge category of knowledge to be able to learn. So it's very fulfilling. So I've been doing this. This is my second year in real estate, and it's been really good.
Yeah.
It's of course provides good income. It also gives us a lot of flexibility to do, where we met, King's Council, to be able to do that, get into investing in ourselves, in our marriage and our family, and also be able to, turn a coaching trip for 2 days into a 5-day family vacation, and be able to actually enjoy that, but still do all the work I need to do, still stay on top of everything. So it's been really fulfilling, and of course, getting to help a lot of people achieve their goals or their dreams through it is that bigger piece of how does it affect people outside of just me.
Right. That's awesome. Wow, I love that. But I didn't realize it was so recent. I mean, I know there's a family heritage there, but you said 2 years in real estate. What were you doing a little bit before then, if you don't mind me asking?
Man, I have done just about everything. From tutoring, education, working pretty much any job you can imagine, driving a truck over the road, and did sales for a long time before I got into this. So I was in the remodeling world for several years before getting into real estate, and going, okay, well, it's one thing to sell somebody some windows or doors or a product for the house. I could just be selling the house.
Right.
So let me go do that.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, it's been 2 years. The fun part is I've had one person who didn't know me prior to getting into real estate ask me how long I'd been in it during the course of our transaction prior to closing. And I think a big part of that is the confidence that you come off with. And that's kind of what we're going to get into today, is knowing your numbers. If you do the research and you know where you stand, you can speak confidently about what's going on. You can have a good expectation of how the transaction is going to go and how it's going to lay out for somebody for the next 5, 10, 15 years. Just knowing your facts, knowing your numbers, doing the research ahead of time.
Right. Wow. That's awesome. And I think that's a great transition point, is the confidence behind your numbers and knowing what those numbers are saying. So for you, for somebody who's had experience analyzing deals, selling properties, how do you get that confidence? I know I've had experience with the analysis, and it can be tough. You're like, well, I would be putting a lot into this. Like, how do you get confident behind your numbers? How do you know they're the right numbers? And how do you ultimately take that leap and say, yeah, this is what we see, and this is what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think the biggest part of that is putting in your reps. And if you have a good trainer, I was blessed to actually be in a really good team with a lot of good training and mentorship there. One thing you do as a new agent, you should be doing comps on houses that are active and then watching them as they go pending and seeing where that goes down the road, all that stuff. That's a really introductory, simple enough way to do it. But really, it's putting in the reps of knowing the neighborhoods, knowing the areas that you're in, using some of the tools that are out there. RPR, Realtor Property Resource, is a good range setter. It's not going to give you what your sale price will be, but it gives you kind of a ballpark range to check yourself against for some properties. The real way that you're going to do it, though, is you're going to sit there and you're going to look at all the sales in the neighborhood. You're going to look at this property. How similar is it to these other ones? Using your square footage, your style, your size, your features. And some of it just comes down to common sense. Right. Does this seem like the property that's going to sell for the same amount as this one that sold over here? Well, no, this one's got 200 square feet more, an extra garage, a brand new roof and AC, and this one hasn't been touched since 1980. All right, well, this is not going to sell for that much. Yep. Right? So you're kind of coaching your buyer or your seller on those facts and knowing those numbers. And another good way to do that is just connecting with appraisers and getting an idea of, if you really have to get in and narrow your focus and start changing numbers and adjusting property values, you're not an appraiser, but to get a better idea, if you have a really tough property to comp, just reach out to appraisers. Most of them are very willing to talk to people. They don't have a problem connecting with agents in the industry. They don't have a problem with giving you some of their numbers. Hey, this is how much I adjust per square foot. In that zip code or that city, this is how much I give for a quarter or half an acre if you're in that kind of residential setting. So it just comes down to making a list, itemizing things, and doing comparisons, which just happens to be something I've always loved. Yeah. And it fits very well into doing this.
That's awesome. Well, that's good. And yeah, what I'm hearing you say is that it is just a repetition kind of thing, and it comes with time, but ultimately it's taking the first step and actually getting involved, and then also reaching out to people is the most important part. One thing, Bryan, is I'm not necessarily hearing you say is that you don't have one of these exorbitant backgrounds in the financial industry or the investing world or a math background. I mean, you said you tutored, maybe you were doing a little bit, but a lot of times people can be intimidated with the investment world or the real estate world. You need a lot of money, or you need a lot of experience, or you need to know your numbers. What would you have to somebody that might want to be in your position, might want to get into the industry, but they have a sense of fear, intimidation, or they don't think they can do it?
Sure. Well, you always can. You can do whatever you set your mind to do. Something that our boy Steve Weatherford always says is, you can be whatever you want to be if you're willing to pay the price.
Right.
And that's really true. And with this, the price is not that high to get into investing and understand it. It's knowledge. So it's a commitment of time. Right. And it can be a commitment of relationships. That's probably the fastest track to understanding how to do it well, is connecting with people who've done it before. And go, hey, listen, I do that now with Roger Sullivan. Right. And he's teaching me some stuff on the Airbnb side, these short-term rentals, and exactly what to look for with those and how to factor those numbers in. And that comes down to your reps. So I'm just emailing him stuff every once in a while going, hey, man, I saw this one. Here's how it comes out of the numbers. Is everything right? Am I looking at that correctly? And just connecting with somebody who's done it and going, here's where I am. This is where I want to be. How did you get there? Because you did it. So how did you do that? You can look online. You can listen to a ton of podcasts. They're all going to be very opinionated and lead you in 50 different directions. Just find somebody you trust and somebody you can connect with and you can be on the same page with, and just have an understanding of, how did you go about doing this? Or how would you recommend me from where I am getting to this point I want to be at? I'm new, I've never done this. How do I get my first investment property? First, you kind of have to know, what type of investment property do I want? What am I expecting from it? And what's it going to take for me to secure that? So do I want a single family? Do I want half a duplex? I'm going to live in half and rent the other half, house hack. What type of property is that? What do I want out of it? Am I expecting an annual percentage? Do I just want cash from a flip? And then how much is going to take for me? Can I do a traditional loan, or do I need to do hard money? Is this going to be a cash only thing? And kind of prep yourself for that, so you have a roadmap for what I need to have, where I'm at, what the steps are along the way.
Awesome, man. That's great. And yeah, I think that'll be very useful for anybody that's looking to get involved. And so thank you for that wisdom. That's great. We've talked a little bit about the analysis and the importance of the numbers and knowing the numbers and getting the reps in. But as the agent, as somebody with experience, as somebody who analyzes regularly, what are some of the most important numbers you look for, either on the buying or the investing side, or if you're the seller's agent too? I guess touch upon each of those individually, but what would you recommend to somebody who's just getting started, where they should be looking when it comes to the most valuable number there is?
Yeah, so that's a really, really good question. So for a buyer, your first starting point needs to be, do you have a pre-approval?
Right.
Some people don't understand that. If you don't have the pre-approval, you're not going to be able to write an offer in the first place. You're not going to get through the door. Or if you do write an offer, no one's going to look at it because you haven't said, hey, I've got somebody ready to give me the money who's already looked at my numbers, already looked at my taxes. They did the numbers side for me and told me I can afford this. That's a pre-approval, not a pre-qualification. I can go get pre-qualified for $4 million right now, right? You can do whatever you want, type in any information you want to, and get a pre-qualification. That pre-approval is your big first step. And talking to preferably a mortgage broker, because they're going to have more than one option for you, right? They're going to open up 20, 30, 50 lenders. That's going to help you understand, how much cash do I expect to have out of pocket for this? Because you're probably going to know how much you have, how much you're comfortable with spending. So talking to that broker is going to help you understand, is that appropriate? Or I just need a house. Okay, great. Here's the money you have. Here's your purchase ability. This is now your price range. So those are the first two, is how much can you bring out of pocket? How much are you comfortable with spending? And then what does that allow you to purchase? What's your buying power? That's really the big two for a buyer. And then once you find the house, obviously you're going to go to an agent, and they're going to tell you, hey, this is my opinion of what it's worth, or this is what I would recommend offering on this home up to maybe this range. They're going to have that conversation and give you an expectation of what it's worth. You just want to make sure you're, kind of vetting them for their experience. Yeah, I've been in it 2 years, but I can give you tons of references from people who are very, very happy with the way the numbers have worked out when we spoke about that, set that right expectation, and it came to fruition just from being careful and being realistic. If you don't, as an agent, you don't want to, although some people do all the time, inflate the numbers or deflate the numbers. You don't want to adjust those. Just be honest and tell them, this is exactly what a good realistic expectation should be for you. So your big three are going to be, what's your cash out of pocket you're comfortable with? What does that buying power get you once you talk to a mortgage broker? And then just doing an evaluation on the home that you like to make sure it's a fit.
Right. Wow.
So a quick example on that side, and then I've got another perfect example for a seller. I just had somebody get their offer rejected. They passed up and they went for another offer. We talked about it ahead of time, and I told them, listen, this thing's already really high on the high end of the price range. They're asking a lot for this property. So let's do what we can do to be the most competitive we can. I just gave them the options and said, that's great. You want to go in at full price. That's a good move, right? It's reasonably worth that amount, but it's really, really tight. You could go with an escalation clause. You could do all these other things, but it's maybe going to appraise at the amount they're asking. It's probably going to be under. So they didn't want to push their offer and go do an escalation clause up to, $25,000 over asking, when we probably think it's not going to appraise for anything more than asking anyway, right? It just doesn't make sense to commit yourself to that fight. And then 3 weeks later, you paid for an inspection already and you're hundreds of dollars out of pocket. And now all of a sudden the seller doesn't want to negotiate down below what their asking price was. It doesn't make sense. So their offer was not accepted, and they were perfectly fine because we had that conversation. The expectation was there up front. Hey, we'll give it what we got, but good chance it's not going to work. Sure enough, somebody came in way over asking with cash, and hey, I mean, that's cool. They're overpaying for that property, and whether they know that or not, that's their choice. Then the second part of that, on the seller side, what are your numbers you need to know? I would encourage everybody as a seller to think more about the next house than the one you're selling. What's your next move going to be? In this market, it's easy to sell the house you have. So let's not act like that's an if.
Right.
It's when are you going to sell that house? Because you know it's going to sell. What are you going to buy next? Okay, well, this is what you're going to do next. What is that going to require? How much money? Okay, great. Now we know you need this much money. Let's look at your house. Here's the evaluation. Here are the numbers on it. Are you going to make enough walking away to even make that happen? Because if not, we don't really need to worry about selling this house. We need to worry more about, okay, how do we make sure you're set up to do that move as soon as possible? What are the things you can do to make sure you get that much money out of that property? So that's really the big one. What do I need to do the next thing?
Right.
Then you can look at, okay, what would I have to sell this house for? Then you can look at, all right, what does the market say it's actually worth? Does this make sense?
Wow.
Because a lot of people will find an agent who will tell them they can sell it for whatever they want.
Yep.
And that property sits on the market for a long time. It's free advertising for that agent because now they have a sign in your yard for $100, and they're going to get a bunch of people calling looking for houses. So you just gave them a ton of leads.
Oh my gosh.
Now your house sat on the market for 6 months, and when you relist it next year in a better market, or you refinance to where you can sell it, every realtor that pulls it up goes, whoa, hey, this thing was already listed for 6 months and there was no movement. What's up? Is there something wrong with this place? I mean, it doesn't always, but it can create a stigma on that property.
Right.
So just be careful with that. Know how much you need to make your next move, how much you have to sell your house for to get that, and what does the market say it's worth to know whether or not that's reasonable.
Wow, dude, that's awesome. That's something that I didn't really think about or know, was this idea that the realtor is getting kind of free advertising. So, I mean, if you don't mind going a little bit more in depth there, like how, I think I might know a little bit of the answer, but for somebody listening, how can somebody who's looking to sell their property be sure of the fact that their realtor is giving them the truth and an honest opinion on their property, and they're not just looking to game the system kind of thing?
Well, one thing I would recommend people to do, if you're not in a neighborhood with a lot of movement, where you're going to have a ton of comps and you've probably got, model homes in that neighborhood, or at least similar builds to where you're pretty comfortably going to be able to say, okay, well, mine's really similar to this house, just maybe 100 square feet off. Or this one has an extra bedroom and mine only has 3, this one has 4. Super easy to adjust, super easy to give you a comp on that property. But if you're out there and you don't have a lot of comps, you're by far the biggest house in the neighborhood or by far the smallest house in the neighborhood, that might be tough. One of the easiest ways to really know where you stand is just getting an appraisal. Cost you a couple $100, but you're going to have a really good expectation up front of what it's most likely going to sell for, or a range. Now, you can have 10 appraisals on your house. They're all going to be 10 different numbers, but they're going to be pretty close. Yeah. And they're going to have reasons and justifications for exactly why, according to government set guidelines. So that's a really solid way to do that. I would encourage anybody who's just not getting clear answers from agents to go that route. Yeah, it costs you money up front, but you know where you stand now. And you know who's being honest with you, or at least who's knowledgeable enough to come up with a similar number.
Wow. That's
Another
awesome.
thing would be asking your agent their track record. How many houses have you listed? How many of those is sold? What was your percentage of asking price to sale price that you got? So that tells me, okay, well, if you took 20 listings last year, you sold 13 of them. Okay, well, 7 didn't sell. It's not terrible, but why didn't those 7 sell? Or you listed 20 last year, you only sold 4. Okay, well, you're probably not doing a good job of getting those set up properly. Of your ones that sold, what was your asking to sale price ratio? And then if you want to take it a step further, what's the average for the neighborhood? Because any agent should be able to go in and pull the sales in that neighborhood, and you can see ratio, percentile, how much did it sell for versus what it was asking. So if everybody else in the neighborhood had 98, 99, 102%, then this person's consistently getting like 90%. Something's not right there. You probably won't have to go that far. You're probably going to get a feeling for that person just by asking those first couple questions. And the people that aren't comfortable will seem very uncomfortable very quickly.
Wow, dude, that's cool, man. Because I mean, this is a Know Your Numbers podcast, and we do talk about the numbers, but we're thinking more high number value as opposed to the ratio of asking price to selling price. Like that's something to
Yeah.
consider and something I wouldn't have if I hadn't had the opportunity to talk with you. So thank you, Bryan.
Sure.
That's good. And there was something that I was on my mind, and now it seems to have slipped a little bit. But let's see what. Oh, the appraisal. Yes, the appraisal. Is that an option? And forgive me if this is a beginner's question, but as a buyer, as a potential investor, are you allowed to get an appraisal on somebody's house before going under contract, before putting an offer in, or is that only something after a couple legal moves?
So good question. Yeah, as a buyer, you're not going to get an appraisal on that property beforehand. Now, if you're an investor and you're able to secure a due diligence period of maybe 45 days or so just to be safe, yeah, you could get an appraisal done. Sure. That's your inspection period, right? That's your time where you are allowed to go in and have that property inspected and evaluated and do all of that. Yeah. So when you think about these development projects, they're having a lot of due diligence done ahead of time. If you're buying raw land, you're going to build something on it, you're going to have a ton of different people look at it. As a traditional home buyer, that's not going to happen until you get your offer accepted and you move through your inspection period. At least in Central Florida, that's how it works. I know some areas are different, but roughly, you're going to have your offer acceptance. Then you're going to look at the property, do any inspections you want to do for an agreed upon period. Then tell your lender, hey, we're good, we're moving forward, go ahead and order the appraisal. That lender is going to send out a ticket, and an appraiser is going to accept that ticket and come do your appraisal.
Wow, that's awesome. All right, so something to keep in mind for all those buyers out there.
For sure.
But that's good. And then another thing we touched upon that is on everybody's mind is the hot market that we're currently in and currently experience. So Bryan, as a real estate agent, as somebody who has looked at a lot of investment opportunities, do you still see opportunity out there for somebody who's just getting started? Would you advise, and I'm not going to hold you to it, but like what are some recommendations you might make to somebody who's looking to invest but knows about the heat of this market and the prices being as high as they are?
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely a good time to get into it because real estate, as we know, is on an upward trend and it stays that way.
Yeah.
And we've had very few small blips in the market or one big blip in the market, right? 08 to 09, that area. And that did have a big effect on the market, a lot of people's homes. But that's not really something that's expected right now from what happened with COVID, right? That was a mortgage-driven crash, a mortgage-driven failure from irresponsible lending, loose restrictions, all that stuff. Created a nightmare scenario for everybody. This is a global pandemic that took everybody as huge surprise, kind of knocked everybody off the rails from where they were. And now we're getting back to, I've heard a few people say, in Central Florida in particular, people are thinking that the market's just insane. Really, when you compare us to the rest of the country, we're kind of getting to where we probably should have been anyway. And in our area, it's probably going to keep growing at 6 to 7% every year, year over year, and just keep appreciating. So is it a good time to get into it? For sure. Rentals are a huge area of need. Owner financing is actually a pretty big area of need too. So a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, we have stated income. We don't have, salary, hourly, annual, on paper income that we know we're going to get. It's going to be variable. It's going to change, or it's like me, commission based.
Right.
That's hard to get a mortgage with right now for a lot of, especially first time buyers or younger buyers. Yeah. So if you can go in and get this really nice property, maybe you can get it below market value, or you can find something that needs work and add that value to it. Then you can turn around and owner finance it. Releases you from a lot of liability versus where you'd be at as a landlord. And at the same time, you're serving 40+% of the market that has just lost their ability to get a mortgage.
Wow.
So there are opportunity zones. That's the big thing to look for. And again, when you connect with an agent, you can ask them, where are the opportunity zones in this market? What are the things that make more sense to buy? For example, a few weeks ago, I was looking at trends and saw that vacant land, which has been almost impossible to get around here, is starting to pop up more. Not only are we getting more of it, there's more of it listed, less of it sold, and the price is going down percentage-wise per acre. Or there's more price reductions on the market than there used to be.
Wow.
There's almost as many reduced as there were new listings. So people are not getting that asking price right away for vacant land anymore. So that's maybe an opportunity zone. Okay, well, that's something to maybe look into. At the same time, we're seeing single family kind of slow down a little bit, where not everything is selling in 2 hours. So there's a little bit more opportunity there. But for sure, it's a good time to get into it because you can find failed short sales and foreclosures. You can find off-market properties. You can find stuff that needs a lot of work. And maybe there aren't as many investors jumping on things right now. So there's a little more opportunity to get into that. At the same time, with mortgage rates being low, you can still get a lot of different, even renovation loans or investment loans without having to have that 20% down and a really high interest rate.
Right.
So there are a lot of options where you can make your cash work for you and generate a good return, the same or better than you could a few years ago even.
Wow. That's awesome. Man, that's something to think about right there. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this because you're spitting gems, and I'm trying to soak it all in, but some goes over my head. But I do want to talk a little bit more about and I don't want to take up too much of your time, Bryan. I appreciate you joining.
Anytime, brother. Go for it.
And, yeah. Okay. Well, on the topic of vacant land, because if that is somewhere where there is a lot of opportunity, you hear of all these big commercial developers or residential developers who will plant 100 or so homes on a big plot of land. But for somebody who is not looking to do that, but also looking to get into the real estate world, where is the value add in the land development or just buying a piece of land, and how can we use that to grow or start our portfolio?
Sure. So if you have somebody who can do construction relatively affordably for you, you can get either, you can get a construction to perm loan, but you can also get, after talking to a mortgage broker down in South Florida that I did one transaction with last year, reached out of the blue. We had a long conversation about some different things. And he actually introduced me to a mortgage product where you can get something similar to what you'd expect as somebody, buying a single family home as their primary residence, comparable interest rates and down payments to that world. But for actually buying a piece of property, putting a new home on it, and then selling it on the market to somebody who would be securing that normal single family loan. So if you can find someone who has attractive construction costs, there's still some money in buying that land and doing a new build and turning it. And we're certainly seeing that here. There's a lot of people buying raw land and throwing homes on them and selling them right now. There's still tons of new construction, right? It's hard trying to keep up with it. And a lot of estimates I've seen or heard people talking about it, it's going to be a few years before new construction keeps up with or meets the demand that's already there. So there's still absolutely opportunity to do that, especially if you are a contractor, building contractor, residential contractor. There is a lot of room for that if you're wanting to kind of take on that side project, or maybe transfer some of your business, some of your effort and time into, maybe doing some one-off builds instead of just remodels. Again, there's some things that have to change in your business to allow that, but there is need for it there. At the same time, one of our mutual friends, Junior, he is actually, I believe, so a few people are doing this, getting more into the side of securing a piece of land, getting the entitlements for it. So doing all the work ahead of time to make sure that it can be platted out for a subdivision, figuring out how many units can go there, getting it all done and set up with the county, then taking that land and marketing it and going, hey, here you go. It's platted for 250 homes. Here's my asking price. Now your value just went from whatever it was down here per acre to up here, because the due diligence on the building side, that what can be done on this property is already taken care of. It's already secured. You've put some money into getting that done, surveying it, recording it, getting, again, the entitlements for that property to make sure it can be built on and getting it approved ahead of time. Now that builder goes in and they're going to do some of their own studies, but they know that this is a viable piece of property that can actually suit their needs and that they can probably make between this and this amount of money off of it. So it becomes much more valuable and gives you a product that just went from raw land to, hey, this makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. And are there anything in particular, any qualities that somebody should look for when it comes to buying land? I mean, obviously, you don't want to get a swamp land or anything like that, but what are some of the key attributes that you might look for before venturing into that field?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on what you're looking for, right? If it's a single family home, some people want flat,
right?
They don't want any slope to it. Other people, like my parents, built their house with a daylight basement, which you don't get in Florida. It's pretty uncommon, especially in this area where water table's high and we're pretty flat. They have this beautiful daylight, walkout basement on the side of a hill looking over a lake. Because they just found this piece of property and were able to build their place on it. So a lot of that can be very personal. The things you do want to look for as far as any sort of due diligence are going to be your floodplain. And you can look online, Google, FEMA flood maps and your state. You should be able to find those, like the 2012, sometimes newer flood maps, and that'll show you your flood zones. Flood zone X means you're outside of a floodplain. Floodplain A, AE, that kind of stuff, that's where you're going to get more concerned about flooding or even flood insurance. So look for flood zone X. Most people are going to have that on their listing anyway. That's good. But check that map, because some of them say X. If part of it is X, then the whole rest of the property is in a flood zone. So careful of your water lines, or your not water lines, but your flood lines, right? Be careful of your floodplains. Beyond that, if you're looking to develop a piece of property, call the county or the city, wherever it's zoned, whatever that jurisdiction is, call their planning and zoning or building department and ask them, what's the density or what's the future use on this property? Here's what I want to do. Will it work on this property? And if you're looking for entitlements, it's a very simple conversation. Hey, if this was going to be developed into a neighborhood, how many units, how many houses per acre could I get on here? And typically 3 is okay. People are really going to want to see 4 or 5 units per acre. That's when you get into like, okay, this thing's solid. And at that time, you can also find out, what are the utilities going to be? Can I tie into or annex into the city and start using city water and sewer? Can I do city water and have to put in septic? Or is it all just going to be me putting in my own stuff? Sewer and septic for every property. And those are things that allow you to kind of budget your costs. And let's say you're going to buy the land and develop it, start building houses with your buddy who's a contractor and does home building, but you've got the money to secure the land. Now you can start factoring in, okay, well, I'm in the county and I'm not going to have city water or sewer. I need to budget X amount of money into the resale cost of every home to cover my septic and my well. So just all that kind of stuff, thinking about, again, the common thread we keep talking about. What does it take to get where I need to be? What do I have right now? What's my bridge in between?
Wow. That's awesome. I love it. And you tied it back to numbers at the end too, with the sewer and the water line. So I appreciate that. That's good. Bryan, this has been awesome. This has been a pleasure. I do have one final question that I want to get over to you, and that has to deal a little bit with the mindset. You talked a little bit about confidence, and you're clearly a confident man, having what some might say is a little experience, but you carry yourself as somebody, and you do have the knowledge that some people probably don't get over a decade or more. So what are some mindset shifts, if any, that you had to overcome when it came to investing, personal finance, real estate, or just life in general? Any big takeaways that you would recommend to the listener?
Yeah, for sure. So one really big one was not so much with real estate, but with commission income. Going from kind of what we talked about. I know I'm making this much money every hour, every day, but that's also my limit. That's also what I'm being told that I'm worth. Okay, no one's guaranteeing me anything, but I can make up there. There's no limit anymore.
Wow.
And that change comes down to, for me at least, it was a simple understanding of, if I go into this job hourly and I don't work, what happens? I don't get paid. I get fired. So what happens if I go into this commission job and I don't work? I don't get paid.
Right.
I get fired or I go broke.
Mm.
What happens if I go into this job and work really, really, really hard, pour everything I've got into it, give it my all, and outperform everybody else around me? I make the same amount I did as if I just came in and squeaked by and did barely enough to not get in trouble.
Yep.
What happens if I do that over here? That.
Wow.
I can make so much more. I can achieve things. I can afford those opportunities for myself, for my family. All of that changes when you get over the fear of, well, yeah, but no one's guaranteeing me a paycheck. Well, no one's guaranteeing you a paycheck anywhere if you fail to produce results.
Right.
Do you believe that you can produce those results? If you do, then that was the point where it was like, all right, yeah, sure. I know I could do that. I know I'm going to make that. Yeah, I know I'm going to make the money in that. Like, Lord willing, I am going to be able to do that because I'm going to apply myself and I'm going to commit to it. And I know that I'm not going to just accept failure and lay down and walk away and, close it all and just go back to normal, right? There's something bigger. I have a vision. I know where I need to be. I know where I'm going. I'm going to get there, and I can't do it here.
Mm-hmm.
The door is up there, so I'm going to go up there.
Come on, man. That's awesome.
That was a big mind shift for me, and pretty much what led me to leave the team to go on my own as well.
Yep.
Right. I can do so much more with this up here than I can down here. I can come in and outperform and do all that kind of stuff. And that's great. And my income was very much able to grow. Right. I could have made a lot more than I did on that team just by producing more. At the same time, there were other things that were very limiting to me. The expectations, the requirements to be a producing member of that team, the opportunities to grow in that team, while also doing the other things that I knew I needed to do, they just didn't match up. If I go do this, maybe I'm making more per transaction, but I have less support, which means I'm going to have to do more stuff to get up here, but it's still up there. I can still get there. And I can do these other things at the same time by setting my own systems, my own processes. So just, I think it really does come down to that confidence and trusting that, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to pour into it. I'm going to give it everything I've got, and I'm going to make it happen.
Wow, that's awesome. And at the end of the day, it's knowing your worth, right? You know that you're capable and willing and able and deserving of that high market value. So props to you, Bryan. That's awesome. And I think that's a great way to close this out. And again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your knowledge, your wisdom, your experience. How can we help you? How can the people get to know you? How can people get involved if they're looking to invest down in Central Florida or just support you in any way? What's the best way to contact you? Where can we support you? Reach out to you?
Sure. So, yeah, absolutely. So by all means, anyone can reach out to me by call or text. My phone number is 407-221-7943. Again, it's 407-221-7943 or KVI. That's Kingdom Ventures Incorporated Realty at iCloud.com. And if you reach out there, I've got a quick investment sheet that I can send over, and it kind of runs you through those quick questions we had spoken about, right? How many times have you done this before? Do you have a minimum number you're wanting to invest? Is there an expectation you have out of it? All that kind of stuff. Runs it through really quick, asking about your market that you want to be in. That way I can either serve you, I can connect you with someone who can, and most importantly, we can have a consultation to go over what are you actually needing. Let's kind of talk through this a little bit and see where you're really at, where you're wanting to be. And again, we'll talk about building that bridge. Here's where you are. Here's where you want to go. Let's figure out how to get you there. And I'm also getting my license in Texas. I'm working on that right now because obviously King's Council, we have a lot of folks who are going to be moving to that area or getting involved who are in that area. It is also an area that I want to get into personally on the investing side. And there's a lot of opportunity there and a lot of opportunity here. So anybody in Central Florida, anybody in Texas, I can certainly help you out personally. Anything else, I can either help you or refer you to somebody who is knowledgeable, who's already been vetted. I kind of give you an idea of their experience and whether or not they're going to be a fit for you. Then, let somebody call them, kind of interview them on their own, give some questions to ask to make sure they're interviewing that agent appropriately too.
That's awesome, man. We appreciate it. And yeah, we'll definitely be looking to get you some more business down there and out there and wherever it goes. So Bryan McDaniel, I appreciate your time. I love you, brother. I'm so grateful that you were able to join us. And yeah, know your numbers, people. It'll make you rich.
All right, brother. I appreciate it, man. I love you. I'm grateful for you and your friendship and your insight and all your help. Man, I'll put a plug in for you. If you guys need help with the books, man, reach out to Chris, Better Books. He will get you set up for sure.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it. You have a good day. I'll see you later, bro.
All right, brother. See you.